So the other day, Roh Kahna was actually detained.
Congress, take action.
Roh Kahna was detained by a bunch of settlers when he traveled to Israel. Sorry about this, I have the ads on.
It was a frightening encounter in the occupied West Bank. Democratic Congressman Roh Kahna, who's weighing a 2028 presidential run, was visiting a Palestinian village this week when he says his team was stopped by armed Israeli settlers.
And these hoodlums come in with machine guns, an M4, an American-made machine gun, and they detain us. They block off the road.
He says when Israeli troops arrived, they sided with the settlers and continued holding the congressman's group.
I saw the arrogance in the eyes of those settlers, 21 and 22-year-olds with guns, laughing that they had detained us. The arrogance of those young IDF soldiers that my tax dollars are funding.
The soldiers allowed the group to leave only after frantic calls to the U.S. Embassy.
I gotta say, it's a real Karen move to tell the random paramilitary settlers in Israel, like, I pay your salary. Maybe not the time to do that, but yeah, it is insane that they, and the thing that doesn't get reported enough is that the IDF continued to hold him after he had explained that he's a, oh hi Diva, that he's a U.S. Senator and, or congressperson, sorry. They continued to hold him at gunpoint. The IDF did, straight up. So the military force, not just the settlers. Because it'd be one thing if basically a bunch of hoodlums did it, but then they were backed up by the IDF. Which, of course, you know, we're wholly funding. One thing to remind people is that Israel has free healthcare. Because they're getting their military so funded by the U.S. that they can afford to put more in their healthcare. This is Diva, by the way.
And the arrival of Israeli police, Kahna says. The IDF says its troops dispersed the settlers and did not take part in blocking the road.
They did not. They took 45 minutes to finally disperse the settlers and allow Roh Kahna to leave. And the entire time he was at gunpoint before that.
Rights groups say Israeli authorities do little to stop acts of violence and harassment by settlers against Palestinians. Israel's prime minister denying that this week.
I don't want and don't accept vigilantism, and I don't care if it comes from Arabs or Jews.
It's funny they cut that clip because we can go look up the whole thing later, because within the next 30 seconds after he says he doesn't allow that vigilantism and stuff, he goes on to say, but the settlers are great people and they would never do this. Which is not true. We were talking about settler violence. You just saw a bunch of images of settler violence and videos of it. And then he turns around and says, oh, you know, it's his version of very fine people on both sides. Like when Trump was talking about the counter protesters that ran over an American citizen and killed her during a protest that were neo-Nazis marching and shouting blood and soil. It's like his version of that. He's watching them do the same thing and saying, well, there were great people on both sides, you know.
Congressman Kahna visited the town of Messiah, home to many Palestinian Americans. In 2023, it was overrun by a mob of settlers who set fire to several homes. Israeli authorities did not prosecute anyone for the attack.
Raf joins us now from Tel Aviv. And Raf, this comes as Democratic voters are becoming more critical of Israel.
That's right, Jose. A new poll.
Becoming more critical of Israel. I mean, we've been highly critical of Israel. The U.S. public has been a lot more critical of Israel than any of our politicians are, which has been the big rip between establishment Dems and progressive Dems, is that the progressive Dems are actually willing to say what the public is saying, which is that they're, you know, anti-Israel because Israel has declared itself a Jewish ethno-state, and the progressives are currently the only people that are not pro-ethno-state. So
The Associated Press finds that 58% of Democrats now believe the U.S. is too supportive of Israel. That's up from 45% 2 years ago. And of course, Gaza has been a major issue in Democratic primaries. Jose.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and
What's crazy to me though is after this, so Roh Kahna had the opportunity after this to come out and say this is insane. We need to cut off all funds and stuff, which he did, to be fair, say, you know, we need to reduce aid to Israel and stuff. But during the same time, he also, no, not this one.
Whoa.
Let me see if I can find it here.
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
We will have a unique opportunity to hear from Congressperson Roh Kahna, Democrat from California 7. Members do not have the perspective of the Palestinians in the West Bank in the brief trip that you had to the West Bank. What
We're going to skip ahead.
Those bills, and the irony that they're
again, another aspect of this conversation that is not like academic, not theoretical, but very real is the illegality of this occupation, and yet no one talks about it. Do you feel like that we have an obligation to try to recalculate our relationship with the nation state of Israel? And what do you suggest that we can do as regular American citizens, and what can Congress do as well?
Yes, I do feel a moral complicity and some moral guilt. You know, one of the reasons I want to share my own evolution is that we need that kind of evolution in America. I voted for a lot of the aid before October 7th. I voted for those bills. And the irony that they're taking the money I voted for to detain me, I mean, to detain Americans there. It's almost a terrible twist of fate, sort of teaching a lesson of justice. But, you know, I've had deep roots in my grandfather and standing up for independence in India and fighting colonialism. And I worked against the war to stop the war in Yemen. And I ran against the first Iraq war. And I've been active in trying to stop the war in Iran. But I was not initially, before October 7th, an activist on the Palestinian issue. But I just saw on my phone the brutal killing of children in Gaza. And I said it's a genocide. And I voted against, for the first time, the aid with Biden, the supplemental bill. They said my political career was over when I voted with 37 other Democrats against that aid. I questioned my own president, as you know, because we met in Chicago. And I was against the Biden then and what the Biden administration was doing and that not having a Palestinian speak. But I have become more and more convinced of the moral stakes of this issue. And at this point, Israel is acting in a rogue way with an apartheid state.
So I think it's going to be the next. I think it's going to be the next question here. He's talking about them committing genocide. He fully admits they're committing genocide. And then let me see if I can find it. Roh Kahna interview. He goes on another interview just today. So he's been doing a media blitz, which I appreciate. Here, I think this is it.
Of American shipbuilding is here.
Where he then, backpedals and says, even though I'm against them, I still am pro-Israel and pro-sending defensive weapons, which is, similar to saying I'm fine with them shooting children. I just want to protect the guy shooting children. I don't want to kill the guy shooting children, which is insane.
Democratic Congressman Roh Kahna,
anti-life.
California Congressman Kahna, thank you so much for being here. My condolences to you. It's a loss for everyone in Congress.
Well, my condolences to Senator Graham's family. He obviously served this country honorably.
This is something about modern politics that I don't think people understand in a historical context. They used to duel each other to the death in politics. It used to be a real thing where they weren't just like, oh, buddies who happen to pass some bills that save or kill millions of people, depending on the policies they do for the U.S. It used to be the fact that they really believed in what they were talking about. And so when one of their opponents died, they wouldn't sit there and go, oh, I'm so sorry for his family. They'd say, good. That means more people can live because they're not going to make the terrible policies that they've been making that are hurting other people my people, my district, the people I represent. And I think we need to get back to that, because some of these people on the Republican side are so awful that they are actively harming Americans, and their death would stop the active harming of Americans. So no, I won't feel bad that Lindsey Graham died. Why should I? It means that other people are potentially going to live, because he's not going to be there to push the ballot measure that's going to increase home prices or increase gas prices or increase food and starve out that one other person who was already on the borderline, who now can't afford their groceries.
The Air Force, he was someone who bucked his own party on immigration.
He was somebody who voted for every single war that in the last interview we just talked about, where he said he was against the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war and all that. Lindsey Graham actively pushed to get the U.S. into those wars throughout his entire career. And all the soldiers that died during those wars, they just don't mean anything. They're just a political pawn to these people, which is something I find really disgusting from Roh Kahna during this interview, the way he tries to bend to the center. Specifically, I think because he's going to run for president, and he wants to set himself up as a centrist, which didn't work for Kamala Harris, and I think it's a bad strategy to start going with now, especially because you have to compromise your morals to do it.
Talked about having undocumented people have a pathway to citizenship. And of course, we had very profound disagreements on foreign policy. I do believe that there is a new generation that does not want these foreign wars and wants a more human rights-oriented foreign policy. But my condolences to him and recognition of his service.
He loved having those debates. And as you say, foreign policy was front and center in those debates. He had a very close relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu. You just heard me talking to Prime Minister Netanyahu. And I do want to ask you, because you just returned from a 3-day trip to the West Bank this week. You say you were held by Israeli settlers with rifles. We do have some still footage that was captured by your team of the incident. We should say in a statement, the Israeli Defense Forces, or the IDF, released a statement saying IDF troops were dispatched to the scene, quickly dispersed the Israeli civilians, and reopened the blocked road. The IDF soldiers operating in the area did not take part in blocking the road. Walk us through what you experienced.
The IDF is lying. What happened was...
Oh, big surprise. The IDF is lying.
They had violent settlers detain American citizens, including an American government official. You had settlers. They had violence, and was unprecedented. What happened was unprecedented. They had violent settlers detain American citizens, including an American government official. You had these settlers brandishing M4s, kicking the tires of our van, laughing at us, mocking at us, videotaping us. We were detained for about 20 minutes, fearful of our lives. Then the IDF comes, 4 soldiers. They tell our translator that they're on the side of the settlers. They further detain us and block us.
Here, I'm going to just back this up a second.
The IDF is lying.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. All right.
The IDF is lying. What happened was unprecedented. They had violent settlers detain American citizens, including an American government official. You had these settlers brandishing M4s, kicking the tires of our van, laughing at us, mocking at us, videotaping us. We were detained for about 20 minutes, fearful of our lives. Then the IDF comes, 4 soldiers. They tell our translator that they're on the side of the settlers. They further detain us and block us in. We had to call the American embassy, fortunately.
And then because he's, a privileged congressperson, he can get out of it. But just imagine this scenario for all the Palestinians. And what would happen to them? They would just be killed. And then just like how the IDF lied about what happened with Roh Kahna, they would just lie about them killing the Palestinian citizens. They would say, oh, they threw rocks at us. Oh, they did this. They did something that warranted us murdering them in the street. That's what's happening right now in Gaza, in Israel, and finally a U.S. congressperson is seeing it for the first time. I don't know what else to say there. It's absolutely insane that it took this long for us to get any press coverage on it. Israel has killed 2/3 of the journalists killed in 2026, and they do it for exactly this reason. If this media was consistently coming out into U.S. feeds, we would cut off all aid. Doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, there would be so much public consensus on this that it wouldn't be. That's why they have to buy up every media source and cover it up as best they can. Because otherwise, you know, they wouldn't be getting the funds that they needed to run this war. But
David Brownstein helped, and he got to someone in Israel, and 75 minutes after the detention by the IDF soldiers and by these settlers, we were let through. Now, I heard the prime minister, and he says that Israel is a country of law and order. Well, let me be very specific. The prime minister needs to open an investigation on these violent settlers who are connected to Yanon Levy, who has destroyed Zanuda's village and is a known person who has killed Palestinians, and these settlers were connected to him. They need to be prosecuted, including Yanon Levy. Their outpost needs to be investigated, and he needs to have an investigation on these 4 IDF officers. Security cameras can see that they were involved in the detention of American citizens. How dare they mistreat people with an American passport that way?
Well,
how dare they just mistreat people, not let alone people with an American
Obviously,
passport?
that's gotten a lot of attention. I want to ask you about something else that has been under a microscope. Your endorsement of Senate candidate Graham Plattner in Maine. He has since dropped out amid a swirl of controversies. Congressman, you stood by him through a series of previous controversies, from a tattoo resembling a Nazi symbol to his online posts blaming survivors of sexual assault, even after the New York Times published allegations from ex-girlfriends describing a pattern of emotional abuse, aggressive behavior.
So the
Published allegations from a Nazi symbol to Congressman Plattner in Maine. He has since dropped out amid a swirl of controversies. Congressman, you stood by him through a series of previous controversies, from a tattoo resembling a Nazi symbol to his online posts blaming survivors of sexual assault, even after the New York Times published allegations from ex-girlfriends describing a pattern of emotional abuse, aggressive behavior, which he denies, we should say. Why weren't those past controversies a breaking point?
So something to note here is exactly what the media does a lot. And it's something that they're trained to do and that they do on purpose, which is they leave out things in out of context so that the way they're framing the question, which this is exactly what framing questions is putting it in a way where even when he answers, it's kind of like, when did you stop beating your wife? He still has to work within the framework they've already set. So he has to be the guy who's doing this, supporting this. What she's leaving out here is that previous allegation of sexual abuse and of relationship abuse from Graham Plattner was from a woman who was explicitly a Republican operative who did date him before. She had also worked directly on the committee that helped get Kavanaugh approved and worked hand in hand with Republicans and had no corroboration, no emails, no evidence, nothing like that. Whereas the new allegations do have that, which is why people are now not supporting him. But she would never frame it that way. She would never frame it honestly, because they want to push this narrative rather than the truth.
For you.
For me, the line always was sexual assault or sexual violence. And as soon as that came out, I was the first person to withdraw my endorsement. But I will say I got that call wrong. And if there's some self-reflection, it is that we all need to see the signs earlier of people who may engage in domestic violence. Look, I wasn't the only one. You had Planned Parenthood. You had Senator Warren.
I mean, he waited until some actual evidence came out. I think that's perfectly justifiable. We can't really keep acting before that.
He was opposed to foreign wars. He was for Medicare for all, and why the progressive movement more broadly, why these issues are resonating.
Do you regret endorsing him?
Yes.
You flat out regret
Yes, I got that call
him.
wrong. I endorse a lot of people, but when I make a mistake, I take accountability. And I think what people want is the humility to take accountability if you make a call that's wrong.
All right, Congressman Kahna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah. So just closing thoughts on that one. So he's doing good getting some of the media touring out. He has said some things that were very pro-Israel, even after this incident has happened, when I think this gives him plenty of justification to go hard in the position that is a 70-30 issue with Democrats, the base that he's trying to reach during his presidential. So leaving aside the morality of the fact that he should be pro-Palestinian because they're being genocided and it's immoral to be against it, as just purely a political strategy, he should also be pro-Palestinian because among Democrats who he would be running as the presidential candidate for and the people who he needs as a base, it's like a 70-30 or 80-20 issue that he needs to be on the side of the 80%, which is pro-Palestinian, not the 20% that's somehow pro-Israel and not Republican.